You ever wish you could just know something, really get it, without, having to wade through endless articles and books?
Yeah, absolutely.
Huh?
Cut right to the chase.
That's what we're doing here. Today, we're diving headfirst into a concept that might just change how you see, well, everything that's already happened. It's called historiophany.
Okay, historiophany. It might sound a bit academic at
A
first,
little bit, yeah.
but the core idea is actually surprisingly simple
Yeah.
and powerful. Instead of thinking of history as like a finished book, something static back there in the past.
Right, done and dusted.
Exactly. Imagine it more as a force that's still very much alive, constantly revealing itself right here in the present. It's about experiencing history as a dynamic, ongoing phenomenon.
Okay, so the past isn't just there, it's active, still happening in a way.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
Active. And the stuff we've been looking at really digs into this from some fascinating angles.
We've got my notes from just yesterday. Always a good place to start, right?
Always fresh.
Then there's this paper exploring historiophany through generative AI, which is pretty mind-bending stuff.
Oh, yeah, that one's interesting.
And finally, some choice bits from the book of historiophany. So our mission today is basically to pull out what this all means for you, how you connect with and understand the past in maybe a new way.
We're hunting for those unexpected connections, those sort of aha moments that just click.
Exactly, those aha moments.
What's immediately striking, I think, is how these different sources, your notes, the tech paper, a theoretical text, they all point towards this central idea of history as something experienced.
Right, not just learned.
For example, the notes kick things off by looking at how art and media don't just depict history, they actually become pathways for us to feel it, to understand it on a much deeper level.
Like a play that puts you right in the middle of a historical moment. Or a song that just evokes the whole feeling of an era.
Precisely. The notes mention how performative acts, for instance, can make historical narratives just burst to life, sometimes in ways that are unpredictable, even life-changing.
It's not just reading words on a page, it's feeling the weight of the past, kind of viscerally.
Exactly, viscerally. And then there's the power of artists to uncover those hidden stories, to give voice to the people and perspectives that have often been overlooked by, let's say, mainstream history.
Yeah, the forgotten voices.
So if we connect this back to the core of historiophany, art and media become these essential mediators.
Mediators.
They're not just relaying information, they're actively shaping how we encounter and internalize the past, which brings us neatly to some of the fundamental dimensions of historiophany that our sources lay out.
Okay, let's get into those core dimensions. The notes and the AI paper both talk about these. First up is phenomenological revelation. That sounds like a mouthful.
It does. It really does.
What's the everyday way to understand that?
Well, think of it this way. Phenomenological revelation is about how history shows up for us right now in the present.
How it appears to us.
Yeah. It's not about some objective truth locked away somewhere. It's about how the past becomes present in our individual consciousness, colored by our own perceptions, our memories, even our imaginations.
So it's the personal way we encounter history.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is that the so-called objective history we often seek is actually, maybe it's a collection of these subjective experiences constantly being reevaluated and reshaped by the present.
Right. So my understanding of, say, the American Revolution, based on what I've read and seen, that's my own unique experience of that historical period right now.
Got it in one.
Okay. The next dimension is temporality. This sounds like it's about time, but maybe not as just a straight line from back then to now.
You're on the right track.
Yeah.
Historiophany argues that history doesn't just march forward in a neat, tidy line. Instead, different moments in time can feel layered, almost overlapping. Think about walking through an old city. You might see ancient ruins right next to modern skyscrapers, right?
Yeah. It happens all the time.
The past isn't gone. It's present. In the architecture, the street layout, maybe even the atmosphere, it's a more multi-dimensional experience of time.
So not like a road, but more like a landscape.
That's a great image. Like a landscape where different historical periods can feel closer or further away, depending on the present moment and what we're focusing on.
Like echoes between different eras. Okay. Next up is affectivity, experiential. That clearly points to the emotional side of things.
Absolutely. Historiophany isn't just some intellectual exercise. It's a full-bodied encounter with history. It engages our senses, our emotions, even our physical being.
A gut feeling.
Exactly. That gut feeling you might get when you visit a place with a significant past. That emotional resonance that goes way beyond just knowing the facts.
Right.
I remember visiting Gettysburg and feeling this unexpected wave of sadness. That visceral reaction really made history feel much more real than any textbook ever could.
Yeah, you can read about something horrific, but being in a place where it happened, that's different. Totally different.
It's a felt presence.
Okay, a felt presence. Then we have materiality and mediation. Sounds like the tangible stuff and how we encounter it.
Precisely. This dimension recognizes that historiophany happens through real things, artifacts, buildings, landscapes, even like the clothes people wore.
The actual objects.
And crucially, it's also about how history is mediated for us through museums, documentaries, even social media these days.
Ah, right. How it's presented.
The way a story is told, the artifacts that are displayed, all of that profoundly shapes our experience of the past.
So a dusty old letter in an archive gives me a different feeling than seeing maybe a reenactment of the event it describes.
Exactly. Different mediation, different feeling. And then we come to transformative potential. This sounds like history can actually change us.
Change us. How so?
Well, historiophany isn't just about looking backward. It has the power to reshape how we see ourselves and what possibilities we imagine for the future. By truly engaging with the past, sometimes we can shed old identities or assumptions and open ourselves up to new ways of being. It could be a form of healing, actually, helping us release the grip of past traumas, maybe, and move forward with a different perspective.
Wow. A therapeutic force. That's a powerful idea. The last of these core dimensions is revelation and unconcealment. What's being brought to light here?
This is when history suddenly reveals new understandings, often sparked by something happening right now in the present.
Like a current event?
Yeah, it's like a current crisis or a societal shift can illuminate past events in a completely new way, bringing forth insights that were previously hidden or maybe just ignored. It's like a spotlight suddenly hitting a forgotten corner of the stage, and suddenly we see the whole play differently.
That makes sense. When we're facing a similar problem today, we might look back and see patterns or lessons we missed before.
Exactly. Now, the AI paper also mentions this idea of unhistorical being. That sounds a bit strange, right? Considering we're talking about history.
Yeah, unhistorical. Seems contradictory.
Well, what's fascinating here is that unhistorical being, drawing on the philosopher Nietzsche, isn't about forgetting history. Not at all.
Okay.
Instead, it's about consciously stepping outside the limitations of a purely historical way of thinking.
What limitations?
The limitation of seeing everything through the lens of the past. It's about recognizing that history is just one lens, and sometimes we need to set it aside to engage more instinctively, more creatively with the present. It's about not being completely defined or constrained by the past.
Okay, so it's like taking a break from constantly analyzing the past to just be in the moment, to act without that weight.
Sort of, yeah. It fits with that transformative potential we just talked about. It allows for that space to create something new.
Got it. Now, our notes also mention some practices of historiophany. How do we actually do this historiophany thing, like practically?
Right, the practical side, the notes outline some interesting approaches. Temporal minimalism is one.
Temporal minimalism.
It's about focusing on the essential elements of a historical moment, stripping away the unnecessary details to grasp the core essence, getting to the heart of it.
Okay, less clutter. What else?
Ritualize letting go.
Oh.
This involves symbolic actions to release our emotional attachments to certain historical narratives or objects that might be holding us back.
Like a form of historical decluttering, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
symbolically burying an old resentment tied to a historical event or something like that.
Interesting.
And then there's narrative rewriting. This is about creatively reimagining historical accounts, maybe through fiction, maybe other ways to explore different possibilities and gain new perspectives. Asking, what if?
Playing with the story.
And finally, artistic composting, which is such a vivid idea, don't you think?
Artistic composting. I love that. Taking the scraps of history.
Exactly. Taking fragments of the past and repurposing them into entirely new artistic expressions, making something new and fertile out of the old.
That's brilliant. Now, our sources really link historiophany with times of crisis. How does a present crisis change how we understand the past?
This is a really critical point. The AI paper gives some compelling examples. It talks about how institutions like the European Central Bank, the IMF, when facing recent economic crises, they looked back at events like the Great Depression, the Asian financial crisis, and reinterpreted them,
How so?
almost seeing them as early warnings or maybe models for what they're dealing with now. Suddenly, past events that might have seemed distant take on a new urgency, a new relevance.
So the present acts like a new lens through which we view the past. What we're going through right now can make us see history in a completely different light.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this process can give us insight into what the paper calls historiotomes.
Historiotomes.
Think of these like blockages or knots in our historical understanding that prevent energy and progress.
Okay, like obstacles.
And also historiopathies. These are like historical illnesses or collective traumas that continue to affect us.
Historical illnesses. Wow, that's a powerful analogy.
It is, isn't it? So unresolved issues from the past can actually be holding us back, actively harming us in the present.
So historiophany helps us see these.
Yes. In this context, historiophany offers that moment of recognition, spotting these blockages and dysfunctions. And that potentially leads to historiotherapiosis.
Historical healing.
Historical healing, yes. Think of those historiotomes like blockages in a river, preventing the flow of historical understanding and its potential for good.
Got it. And this relates to another concept mentioned, the sublime warehouse.
Ah, yes, the sublime warehouse. That vast, almost overwhelming collection of everything that has ever happened, all of history's stuff.
Okay, the whole archive.
Exactly. When a crisis hits, it forces us to pick and choose certain elements from that warehouse, to reinterpret them in a way that helps us understand our current situation.
So the crisis acts like a curator.
That's a perfect way to put it. The crisis acts as a curator, highlighting certain pieces in the collection and giving them new meaning.
So the crisis isn't just a disaster. It can actually be a catalyst for new understanding. A painful one, maybe, but still.
Exactly. And the AI paper makes a really interesting point here. It suggests that a present crisis isn't necessarily the end of a story, but more like reality sculpting.
Reality sculpting.
Yeah. Through this intense process of reinterpretation and understanding, we actively reshape our shared sense of what is and what has been.
Wow.
It's not about finding one single definitive truth about the past, but maybe more about a multiversal understanding.
Multiversal, like parallel histories.
Sort of, where different interpretations can coexist, each offering its own valuable perspective. It acknowledges the complexity.
A multiversal understanding of history. That's a mind-blowing way to think about it. Now let's loop back to art again. We touched on artistic composting, and our sources mentioned something called the historiothèque. What is that?
Yes, the historiothèque is a fascinating concept. It comes up in the Book of Historiophany and other notes. Imagine it as a central meeting place, a kind of hub where art and historical research collide.
A meeting place.
It's described as both a witness box, a place where the past can testify, maybe, and also a cultural operating system.
A cultural operating system, like for society.
Something like that. Something that actively shapes how we understand and interact with history. It's seen as a prime site for that artistic composting we discussed.
Where the fragments get reimagined.
Exactly. Where historical fragments can be reimagined and given new life through artistic creation.
That sounds incredibly dynamic, like it's constantly updating our understanding of the past. And the notes mention ref cards being used there. What are those?
Ah, ref cards. They're essentially presented as digital index cards. Tools designed to help navigate the complex web of historical information within this historiothèque idea.
Okay, like organizational tools.
Yeah, conceptual tools, allowing artists and researchers to explore the intricate connections between different historical events, ideas, artifacts. They're a way to manage and make sense of that vast sublime warehouse on a more manageable scale.
So like a digital filing system for historical concepts, but maybe more interactive?
Something like that. Now, the Book of Historiophany also introduces this idea of historiovision. What exactly is that?
Historiovision, like a way of seeing...
Pretty much. Historiovision is presented as the overall framework, the lens through which we try to see history as a connected and meaningful whole.
Right.
It's more than just collecting facts. It's about actively trying to understand the relationships between past events, cultural narratives, and how they continue to influence us today. It's both a way of looking at history and a way of making sense of what we see.
Okay, so it's the perspective we take when engaging with historiophany. And it involves some key ideas, like the horizon of historical meaning. What's that?
The horizon of historical meaning. Think of it as the limits of what an individual or a society can currently understand and interpret within the vast patterns of history.
The limits of our understanding.
Yeah. A narrow horizon might mean focusing on a very specific, maybe limited view of the past. while a broader horizon involves trying to understand global connections, diverse perspectives, that sort of thing.
And our own current viewpoints definitely shape that horizon, right? They limit what we're able to see in the past.
Absolutely, it's unavoidable.
Okay. What about temporal relationality?
This one highlights the deep interconnectedness of the past, present, and future within historiovision.
The connections through time.
Right. It's about recognizing that history isn't just a series of isolated events, but a dynamic field where our interpretations of the past directly influence our actions in the present and our visions for what might come next. It's all linked.
And then there's salutogenic historiovision. That sounds like it connects back to healing harmful narratives like we talked about earlier with historiotherapy uses.
Exactly right. Salutogenic historiovision is about actively working to heal those historiopathies, those damaging historical narratives that cause harm.
How's it do that?
By promoting inclusive, thoughtful, critical ways of looking at history, confronting difficult truths, fostering a more balanced and restorative understanding of the past.
So it's a way of using historiovision for positive change and healing, a conscious effort to use our understanding of history to make things better now.
That's the idea, using history to heal, not hurt.
Now, we also have this intriguing figure mentioned, the historiophant. What exactly is a historiophant? It sounds almost mythical.
It does have a mythical ring to it. The historiophant is portrayed as a kind of luminous guide through the complexities of time.
A guide.
But they're not just about preserving the past, like an archivist might be. Their role is described as helping us cultivate a dissolution of rigid historical understandings.
Dissolution, breaking down.
Breaking them down into new creative possibilities. Think of them as facilitators who help us move beyond fixed, maybe dogmatic ideas about the past. It's a poetic way of describing someone who helps unlock the creative potential within history.
A luminous dissolution. That's beautifully put. So they help us break free from the weight of history when it becomes too rigid.
Precisely. Their role becomes particularly important, the text suggests, when historical narratives harden into dogma, when the past starts to feel like a burden rather than a source of inspiration.
Right.
The historiophant guides us toward this luminous dissolution, where the weight transforms into the lightness of possibility. They help us find that creative spark within the vastness of the past.
That sounds like a really important role, especially now when historical narratives are often so contested. Okay, let's bring it all together by talking about how generative AI fits into this picture. Our sources specifically mention historiophany and AI.
Yeah, this is where things get really contemporary and interesting. The Book of Historiophany explores how AI, how it can be used in this context.
Yeah.
It suggests that AI, when given specific, maybe even conflicting instructions or constraints, can actually produce unexpected outputs, things that creators call productive hallucinations.
Productive hallucinations. So AI making stuff up, but in a good way.
Kind of. Instead of just dismissing these surprising results as errors, the idea is to see them as potentially new and innovative ways of engaging with historical material.
So AI can almost stumble upon new ways of seeing the past that we humans might not have thought of.
That's the possibility being explored. The approach described involves combining this AI-driven exploration with traditional archival research and various creative practices, painting, digital art, sound design, even writing speculative fiction.
So mixing the old and the new.
Exactly. Creating a dynamic interplay between historical material and the emergent possibilities of technology. AI becomes another tool in historiotheque, you could say.
Another way to explore and reimagine history. So AI isn't just a tool for analyzing the past, it can actually be a partner in creatively reinterpreting it. Fascinating.
It really is.
Now, we've talked quite a bit about historiophany having this potential for healing. Our sources mention a historiophanic continuum. What does that illustrate?
The historiophanic continuum. Yeah, it's basically a way of visualizing the spectrum of how history can affect us.
A spectrum.
Right. On one end, you have historiopathogenic processes.
Pathogenic, like disease-causing.
Exactly. These are the ways that our relationship with the past can be damaging, leading to things like trauma, alienation, social divisions, the harmful side.
Okay, and the other end?
On the other end, you have historiosalutogenic processes. Salutogenic means health-promoting.
The healing side.
These are the positive and restorative ways that engaging with history can heal, reconnect, and empower us. So it's a spectrum from harmful to healing, depending on how we engage.
So it's not just that history is, it's about how our engagement with it can have very different outcomes. Can you give some concrete examples of these two types of processes?
Sure. Examples of historiopathogenic processes. Well, that might include the deliberate erasure of certain groups from historical narratives, or the use of history to fuel harmful nationalist ideologies, things that cause damage.
Right, we see that. And the other side, salutogenic.
On the historiosologenic side, you could have artistic projects that reclaim and reinterpret marginalized histories, or even films that challenge dominant narratives and promote a more just understanding of the past, things that repair or build understanding.
That really clarifies how history can be both a source of pain and a pathway to healing. And this leads us directly to historiotherapeutics, right?
Exactly. Historiotherapeutics is the formal study and application of methods to heal those historiopathies, those historical wounds we talked about.
So the practical application of the healing side.
Yes. This could include things like truth and reconciliation commissions, community-based historical projects, or even therapeutic approaches that help individuals process historical trauma.
So historiophany isn't just about intellectual understanding, it's also about active intervention and healing. Taking that understanding and consciously applying it to address the negative legacies of the past.
Precisely. It's about making a difference with that understanding.
Now, our sources also link historiophany to this idea of historical epiphany. What's that connection?
The AI paper draws a really interesting parallel here. It links historiophany to the ancient Greek concept of epiphania.
Epiphany, like a sudden realization.
Yes, but the Greek sense wasn't just about something appearing, but about a full and significant presence, a manifestation.
Okay.
Historical epiphany, then, is that moment of sudden, profound realization or insight within a historical context. It's more than just learning a new fact. It's a moment where something clicks into place and your entire understanding shifts.
Like a flash of understanding that suddenly illuminates the past in a new way.
Exactly. And this relates to the idea of hiddenness in plain sight.
Hidden in plain sight.
How deeper meanings and connections within familiar historical contexts can be revealed through a historiophanic lens. It's like suddenly noticing a detail in a famous painting you've seen 100 times before, and that detail changes the whole meaning for you.
I get that.
And the notes also touch briefly on the sublime and uncanny aspects of historiophany.
Sublime and uncanny.
Yeah, the sheer scale of history, all those lives and events that can be overwhelming, awe-inspiring even, that's the sublime.
Right, the vastness.
And the uncanny comes in when the past feels strangely familiar, when something old resonates with the present in a way that's almost unsettling.
Like déjà vu, but with history.
Something like that. Think of finding an old photograph of someone who looks eerily like a relative. You've never met that strange sense of connection across time. That's the uncanny feeling.
Yeah, that definitely gives you chills just thinking about it. Okay, finally, some of our sources engage in metafictional reflections on historiophany. What's that all about? Sounds very meta.
It is pretty meta. This is where the authors themselves reflect on the very act of interpreting and writing about history as a form of historiophany.
So writing about history is doing historiophany.
In a way, yes. They're acknowledging that the way we tell stories about the past isn't a neutral act. It's an active engagement with it, and it shapes our understanding just as much as the facts themselves.
So history reflecting on its own creation.
Exactly. Highlighting the active role we play in shaping our understanding of the past, even as we're trying to understand it.
So even our conversation right now, as we try to unpack historiophany, is itself a little act of it, shaping understanding.
You could definitely argue that. It highlights the dynamic and participatory nature of how we relate to the past.
Wow. Okay, let's try to pull all these threads together then. It sounds like historiophany offers us a really fresh perspective on history, not as a static record, but as this vibrant, ongoing force that shapes our present, our future, in all sorts of surprising ways.
That's the key takeaway, I think. It's about moving beyond just knowing the facts and engaging with the past on a deeper, more experiential level.
Feeling its impact.
Feeling its impact, recognizing its potential for both harm and healing, and understanding its constant evolution through our present-day encounters.
And it's fascinating how art, media, and even these cutting-edge technologies like AI can serve as powerful catalysts for those historiophanic moments, those sudden flashes of historical insight.
Absolutely. They become tools, or maybe conduits, for that experience. It really encourages you to reconsider your own relationship with the past.
How so?
Well, that old family story you've heard, that forgotten photograph in a drawer, that visit to a historical site. Maybe these are more than just passive memories. Maybe they're active moments of historiophany waiting to be recognized.
Waiting to reveal something new.
Exactly, waiting to reveal something new about yourself and the world around you, based on how you connect with that past moment now.
That's a really compelling thought to end on. So, for everyone listening, consider how your own personal encounters with the past, maybe a story passed down through your family, a forgotten object you found in the attic, a visit to a place where history unfolded. How might those be understood through this lens of historiophany?
What surprising truths might those moments reveal? And how might they subtly reshape your understanding of the present?
Yeah. We definitely encourage you to delve deeper into these ideas: historiophany, historiovision, the dynamic role of art and technology. Maybe even explore those concepts of historiotomes and historiotherapeiodosis. It's a whole new way to think about our ongoing dialogue with history.